Hey everybody, guess what? I know this was never mentioned before, but Barry now has Conqueror's Haki, canonically. See? Right there. That's how you can tell when a burst of light comes from his eyes and everything goes inverted color palette really quick. That's how you know. That is the sign of a conqueror, alright? Hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking and Barry back again, and this will be episode 984 of the One Piece anime. It was a good one. We got a lot of really cool scenes in this episode. The raid has officially kicked off. We got some cool moments with Kinemon leading the eastern forces, Denjiro leading the southern forces, the rest of the scabbards and Law's submarine going around to the back of Onigashima, and Kid and Luffy pretty much just charging into the front door of Muffin Mountain, because that's what they do. Honestly, you know, Kinemon should have, like, planned everything around that. I think he actually honestly did, because Kinemon is a master of 4D, 5D chess, so he's like, alright, we're going to plan this strategically, and even Luffy and Kid doing something, you know, off of the plan is still part of my strategic plan, alright? So, they're just charging right in. Zoro, of course, is going after Luffy. It's also an interesting episode because we got some stuff that was foreshadowed for later that did not happen in the manga. Two things in particular. One is the scene with Barry unlocking Conqueror's Haki. Yeah, Barry shows up in this episode. I was just as surprised as you. There probably is a brick somewhere. I mean, it's a pretty big mansion. You know, there's probably a brick over there next to the giant sword and the gazebo in the front yard of Onigashima. But no, we see a scene where Zoro exhibits Conqueror's Haki. Just a glimmer. He doesn't, like, knock out the entire festival hall or anything like that, but we have a scene there, and we also have a scene which a lot of people were kind of guessing as who this character was. There's a few characters that actually could have been, but remember the scene in the manga when all of the Straw Hats are separating? So Luffy and Zoro obviously just go in right through the front door, and then, you know, Frankie takes out the FRU-4 and the Brachio Tank 5, and then the Straw Hats separate again. One, you know, Frankie and Brook go on the bike, and Sanji's also on the bike, I think, and then Usopp and Nami and Carrot and Shinobu and Chopper all crammed in the tank together. That was a pretty funny scene. You know, there was a lot of fan service in this episode too, which actually made me think. I was watching this and I'm like, there's a lot of boobs in this episode, and I was immediately thinking back to the 7th One Piece movie, and Eisaku Inoue, who did the animation for that movie, and also did the animation for the episode where the Mary gets burned, you know, the tearful goodbye to the Going Mary. Go back and watch that episode, because it's a very well-animated episode, and it's very sad, and then Dear Friends by Try playing cues up as the Mary is burned, but go back and watch that episode. Nami and Robin's boobs are very prominent in that one as well, so I'm like, Eisaku Inoue, did they bring you on again to do this? No, the animation director this time around was Shigefume Shingaki, and Yasunori Koyama, that was the director for this episode. I just noticed the fan service because it was pretty prevalent. Anyway, back to the plot, which fan service is kind of the plot, but anyway, back to the plot, okay? So Jinbei and Robin, though, decide to go off on their own. They're just going to walk into the festival hall, you know, kind of like what Luffy did, but a little bit more, like, tactical, where it's like, okay, instead of just riding in on a giant motorcycle or a tank, how about we just walk in and just blend in with the crowd, which is the whole point of Kinemon, you know, disguising us as members of the Beast Pirates. So why don't we just follow that plan? So as they're walking away, we see a mysterious shadow watching them from, like, the bushes. And we never actually found out who that person was in the manga. There was a lot of assumptions that it could have been Yamato. It also might have been Otama, because we find out later in the manga that Otama arrives in Onigashima. So, you know, there was, like, a lot of, like, guesses who it could have been. We didn't know exactly. In this episode, it's explained right away it is Yamato, because we see Yamato's mask kind of emerging from the shadows, watching Jinbei and Robin walk away, alright? And I guess that's the character that makes the most sense, but it was just never revealed in the manga, so we get it here, okay? So those are really the two scenes that really touched upon things that were, like, foreshadowing stuff later on in the story that the manga really did not, okay? We're going to get back to the Zoro Conqueror's Haki scene. We'll break that down in just a moment. Want to talk about some other stuff in the episode, though. So, the lighting. Very interesting lighting choice in this episode. Of course, a few episodes back, we had the epic rave and the music video with Queen dancing and, like, the strobe lights and the lasers are everywhere. And you know what? Actually, I'm really excited for that being the layout of the live stage, okay? Because I've said this before, but reading the manga, I always assumed that when all the fights were happening in the live stage, you know, because the live stage is the center for a lot of crazy stuff that's about about to happen in this war. I always assumed it was just a big wide open space that was lit with a crap ton of spotlights, okay? And that was the scene. And now, because of the anime, it's actually showing us the complete opposite, where it's a mostly dark kind of room lit by, like, multicolored lasers and whatnot. And I guess that can always change when the party is over and the war actually starts, and, you know, all the, Queen comes out as a brachiosaur and starts stomping around, and the samurai start fighting. I guess they could be like, alright, kill the lights, kill the lasers, throw up the spotlights, to make it easier to see, to fight. But if this was the backdrop for the entire arc, I would be 100% cool with that, because it would be giving us a very different kind of aesthetic that we really haven't seen before in One Piece. First off, you gotta remember, a lot of the fights, and pretty much all the fights in Onigashima, take place inside of the Skull Dome, with the battle with Kaido and Big Mom and the Scabbards, and, eventually the Worst Generation happening on the roof, okay? And that's gonna be a cool backdrop in its own right, because of, like, the clouds and the moon and the snow and everything. That'll be really cool. But the rest of these fights are happening indoors. Alright, now we've seen that before, like during Punk Hazard, the final battle there all happened inside Caesar's laboratory and everything like that. Whole Cake Chateau, the Mirror World during Totland and whatnot. But it's going to be a really cool, different kind of idea where you have the festival stage, which is like a black background lit by like multicolored lasers all over the place, and like a disco ball and like a disco floor or whatever. Like, for those fights to all happen there, that'll be really cool. So I hope it kind of just stays that way that it is now, okay? And then there's other battles that occur in different rooms, scattered all over the towers and everything, and they could all have their different, like, kind of aesthetic, and that would be neat. So you have a lot of opportunity here, because, like, Kaido's manor is sort of like, it's based on, feudal Japan, like everything else, but there's, like, a modern bent to it, with all the modern technology, so it's kind of anachronistic, and I like that style, okay? Now, as for the specific lighting choices that were used in this episode, it really does feel like a filter that was just used. Like, I could do it right here. Like, there you go. There, yeah, that's the thing in the episode. Yeah, zooma, 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 zooma. Especially coming off of the episode just 2 ago where we had the awesome music video scene. Yeah, that's kind of jarring, and there were times where it was actually kind of hurting my eyes to look at it. So I'm like, okay, maybe using this every once in a while. Like, I could imagine, like, in a really cool scene where, like, Luffy's about to go punch, one of the Beast Pirates, maybe we could have a scene or two of, like, the reaction, but probably minimize the use of that overall, okay? Because, a few times used in this episode, I think it was a little bit too much just then and there. And I guess what they were trying to do is add, like, the feel that this is a rave, so it's, like, with the different lights and everything going on, so they wanted to give that impression, but it came off as just kind of distracting to me. I wasn't a huge fan of it. So yeah, greatly reduce the amount of that, like that kind of filter in the future. There was a few times where it was used really cool. It was when Luffy first walked into the festival stage. I thought that scene was really nice, where Luffy's just running, and then all of a sudden it's just nothing but just like on a black background, and Luffy's running, and he's with that like weird filter over him, and then it just opens up to the rave, and he's like, oh wow, what's going on here? So that was a cool scene to have, like, Luffy running into the hall and being met with this giant party, and Luffy's kind of taken aback a bit, like, whoa, oh wow, well, they know how to party, so that was a cool scene. But just random scenes with, like, people dancing and drinking, and, like, the filter was over it. I'm like, you don't really need to do that. Only use it if it's absolutely necessary, right? So there was that. We got some extra moments with the Tobi Roppo, kind of filler there, actually a lot of filler, but hey, it was also really cool to see more of their personalities, because, aside from Page 1 and Drake, we have never met the Tobi Roppo up until this point before, right? So we don't know really anything about Ulti or Black Maria or Who's Who or Sasaki, and, the fights are going to get started really, really quick, so I can see why they would also expand on a little bit more of their personality. And so really that whole scene, though, made me just feel bad for Page 1, because Page 1 is, let's be honest, he is probably the weakest out of the Tobi Roppo. He's the youngest of the Tobi Roppo. He's 20 years old, so he was probably like the newest recruit, and, you know, Ulti, his big sister, is there. And there was a scene where Ulti was just like, I'm bored, Pei, tell me a story. And I was gonna say bedtime story, but they're not ready to go to bed yet. Maybe, I would imagine Ulti probably does ask Page One to read her bedtime stories as well. But anyway, he's like, I'm bored, Pei, read me a story. And Page One's like, I don't want to, sis. He's like, read me a story! And just like, oh god, I don't really have any interesting stories, I'm sorry. And then Ulti's just like, what? You mean your entire life? You don't have a single interesting story to tell? That's so sad. And then she just like jumps on him and just like, Pei, I'm so sorry. And then, you know, Page One's like, get off of me, you're heavy. He's like, what did you just say? And it's like, oh my god. And just everybody's just watching them, like Who's Who and Sasaki and Drake and Black Maria. They're just watching this, like, you know, it's like basically dinner and a show at this point. Like, yeah, before Kaido shows up, you know, before we get into the festival, let's have some appetizers and watch, you know, the Page One Ulti little vaudeville routine going on over here. You know, so it makes me really feel bad for Page One, because you get the impression from Page One that he's like, all right, I'm a Tobi Roppo now. I'm a damn Spinosaurus! I'm an ancient zone user! That's right, I might be the youngest of the Tobi Roppo. I might be the weakest, but I'm gonna prove myself in Kaido's Beast Pirates. One of the Yonko decided to recruit me! I'm badass! And then all of a sudden Ulti comes out of nowhere like, Pei, let's play tag! It's like, I don't want to play tag! Let's play tag! And then, like, everybody in the background is just, like, watching them like they're children. And, poor Page One, man. Poor Page One. So that was at least fun to see the Tobi Roppo and how they interact, you know, a little bit more. And I think that's really the point of this episode. I think that's what the director, Yasunori Koyama, was really going for, setting up more foreshadowing for later in the battle, okay? So, foreshadowing for Yamato, we've already had a little bit of that in the last episode and the one before that. Foreshadowing for more of just the Tobi Roppo's personalities. And, you know, I have no issue with that. You might have said that that's just filler for the sake of filler. No, it does serve a purpose, because it's like, hey, we haven't really had time to establish these characters. We're about ready to get into a fight. Alright, so I want to find out a little bit more about the Tobi Roppo, at least what they're all about and everything, and look forward to maybe a few more scenes sprinkled through Onigashima until the fights actually get squared up, okay? So we can have a little bit of that. So let's talk about Zoro's moment, alright? So the situation with Zoro and the Conqueror's Haki, okay? So Zoro's walking through the live stage, he's trying to find Luffy, and he's kind of like moving all the the drunk beast pirates, so, you know, they're getting toasted, and Zoro's like, out of the way, I gotta find somebody, move it. You know, he's just shoving people out of the way. And so one of the beast pirates, we don't actually know this, but at least it's implied that, like, it's one of the people Zoro shoved, and he's, like, trying to start a fight. You know, he's like, hey, you gotta say you're sorry for that, buddy. And he, like, grabs Zoro's shoulder, and the second he grabs Zoro's shoulder, he just kind of turns and glares at him, and it's just like, what? And then just like impact, just like freaking Ivankov's death wink, just fires off of Zoro's eyes, and it hits the Beast Pirate member, probably just like a random waiter or whatever, and he doesn't get knocked out or anything like that. He seems like, oh, really quick, and then he just goes back to being drunk, and he's like, oh! Aw, hey man, what's with that intimidating glare? Calm down, have a drink, best booze in all of Wano, right? Now, there's a couple of ways you can take this, okay? The first time I watched it, I took it to be that this guy wanted to kick Zoro's ass because he, like, shoved him out of the way. It's just like, hey, who you shoving, buddy? And then, as soon as he grabbed Zoro's shoulder and he got that dose of Conqueror's Haki, that kind of, like, settled him down. He's also very drunk, so that kind of just like, hey, I'm gonna kick your... Boom! Hey, buddy, what are you doing over here? Have some booze! You know, like, Zoro's Conquerors wasn't enough to knock him out, but it was enough to kind of, like, his subconscious told him, like, do not start a fight with this guy. Do not start a fight with this guy with the green hair and the scar. He will kick your ass. Just go back to being drunk and ask him if he wants to drink some booze with you, right? So that was the first way I interpreted it. The other way that I'm looking at it now, and this is probably more likely, was that this guy maybe was not trying to start a fight at all. He was just drunk, and he's just like, hey, you don't have any booze? Come on, drink some booze. And then he gets the shot of Conquerors, but he just really did just view it as, like, an intimidating glare. And also because he's inebriated, he didn't really have time to realize, hey, wait a second, you just used Conqueror's Haki on me. No, he's toasted. So he's just gonna be like, whoa, hey man, that's a crazy little party trick you did with that. You like glared at me and my hair shot up in the air. That's crazy. Here you go. You know, like that might be more of the way, like he was already harmless. So there's two ways of looking at it, but at any rate, it comes down to Zoro definitely exhibiting traits of Conqueror's Haki right there. Because, and nobody calls it Conqueror's, but that's what it is, right? It's not armament Haki, it's not observation. Maybe if you want to go along with the theory that Zoro is a reincarnated demon from hell, maybe that was the demon, you know, lurking behind Zoro's visage, maybe. But no, that was a setup for Conquerors. We're going to get, because Oda did foreshadow Zoro's Conquerors later on in the battle, when, you know, the whole area is shaking, and then Brook has that comment of like, you know, Zoro, was that your Conqueror's Haki? And Zoro's like, what are you saying, Brook? I don't have that. So it was foreshadowed again, and then once more, when we finally get to the roof, it's explained by Kaido that Zoro does indeed have it, although Zoro himself is unaware. So, adding a few more layers of this, and they might even add more, so like this one glimmer of it, so maybe questions like, does he have it? And then the other comment from Brook, he's like, well, maybe, and then when he's on the roof, it's finally explained that he does have it, okay? So more foreshadowing in that one particular instance, I'm okay with that. I thought it was a pretty funny scene, because like, Zoro is a little bit on edge, because they are surrounded by enemies, and remember, the whole reason Zoro went into the festival hall was to, you know, chase after Luffy and bring him back. So he's probably like a little bit like, okay, I gotta get into the festival hall, grab Luffy, get his ass out of here, and then continue with the plan, alright? So he's walking in the hallway, and he's ready for a fight. Like, he's not going to start a fight, but he has his hands on his katana, and he's just like, okay, if any of these beast pirates recognize me, if they decide to jump me, I gotta be ready. And so somebody just grabs his shoulder like in a freaking horror movie. Remember that? Like, every time in an old school horror movie, whenever somebody wants to get somebody's attention, like somebody's walking around outside at dark, what was that creepy sound I heard? Donna, Donna, Donna. I know I'm doing the Jaws theme, but whatever. Donna, Donna, Donna. And then someone just, hey, what's going on? Ah! You know, like, that is not how you approach a human being, right? But Zoro's already on edge, so somebody touches his shoulder, he's like, time to fight! And it's like, oh, no, time to drink. Oh, okay, cool. So that was good. And then the scene with Yamato, like, Yamato has already been revealed at this point in the anime, so that's not that big of a deal. But yeah, Yamato is there and observing the Straw Hats, and, you know, we'll see what happens later on with Yamato's character. The final scene of the episode was pretty nice. They mixed together some silhouettes from the current place where they're at with some flashbacks. So it's the scene with Zoro, you know, drinking the booze, and then he's flashing back to Okobore Town and Ebisu Town, and like especially Ebisu Town when everybody was laughing, and you know they're all miserable because you know their conditions, but they're forced to laugh because of the smiles and everything that Orochi fed them. So you know there's a scene with that where Zoro's realizing how horrible the Beast Pirates are, and they're just you know they're bad mouthing everybody in Wano. All the people that lived in Ebisu and Okobore. It's just like, man, I bet the people in Okobore Town would drop dead after eating all this delicious food. Man, we have it way better than them, you know, so Zoro's getting pissed by this, and then Luffy, you know, some of the Beast Pirates offer him food, and he gives Luffy a giant piece of, like, mutton and, like, meat, and Luffy's, like, right about to eat it, but then he flashes back to Tama, who's starving to death over at Amagasa Village, and barely has anything more than just, like, millet to eat, you know, and then, like, the Oshiruko, and then, of course, they have the giant pot of Oshiruko that the Beast Pirates just throw down on the ground, because it's like, man, this stuff sucks, it's too sweet, you can't drink, you can't eat this with sake, and they just throw it on the ground. It goes on Luffy's head, and then it's the scene where Luffy just BAM! Just kicks off the giant pot covered in Oshiruko, and he just looks around at the whole festival hall, and he's just like, alright, Kaido can wait for right now. I gotta take care of some business. Cracks his knuckles, end of episode. Zoro's the same way, takes out his sword like, alright, so that's how the episode ends. Pretty good. In terms of just the setup for the raid, we also had a scene with Kandro there. There was some flashbacks that kind of like pad out the episode, but that's really important to use that at that point, at like the end, because Wano, I mean, it is a pretty long arc, and to like kind of reestablish why they're there and why they are fighting. Obviously, it's to, you know, because of the samurai, the scabbards, and Odin's will and everything, but also more importantly than that, Luffy befriended Tama, and Zoro befriended defeated Yasuie. And we found out about their individual plights throughout all of Wano, and so Luffy's fighting for Tama's plight, and, you know, Yasuie died, but, you know, Otoko is still alive, and the people of Ebisu Town that Zoro spent time with, he knows about them. So, you know, that's the reason why they're personally, you know, have a vendetta against the Beast Pirates. That's the reason why they're really fighting. To help out the samurai is a good cause as well, but that's the thing that really gets their blood boiling, right? So anyway, that was the episode. Pretty good, and now we're just going to continue. We're going to have some setup here, but we're going to get into fights pretty soon. And like I said, you know, maybe reduce the amount of that filter, and, you know, also maybe give some more foreshadowing for, like, character personalities. I'm okay with all that stuff. I was also thinking about what they're going to do for episode 1000, because we're getting pretty close to that. We already had chapter 1000 earlier this year. I think it was the first chapter of the new year, and the way they're going right now, episode 1000 is definitely going to hit by the end of 2021, unless there's another break or something. So I'm really excited. I'm wondering if they're going to try to sync up chapter 1000 to episode 1000, so the same stuff that happens in the chapter happens in the anime. They could do it at the end of the last episode, episode 984. That was the ending of chapter 979, okay? So we have about 20 chapters or so to get to chapter 1000 in the anime. Now, the anime usually goes one chapter per episode, but they can definitely stretch that out. There can also be, you know, OVAs or specials along the way, and I imagine that's probably something they're going to do when we get close to episode 1000. It's probably going to be like a special One Piece retrospective. They'll go back and reanimate Romance Dawn for like the 7th time or whatever. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. This will be Tekking and Barry with Conqueror's Haki. Okay, maybe settle down on that a little bit, buddy. Ugh. Siding out.